Hello, everyone. Hello, Karim. I know many of you in the room. I'm Habib Kairouz, but for those of you who don't know me, just to tell you a bit about myself, and it's not about me, it's actually a segue into the conversation we're going to have. I'm a managing partner at Row Capital. We're a venture capital firm. For the last 30 years, I've been investing in early stage startup companies in the United States. Basically, backing entrepreneurs who want to come up with new concepts, new products, create new markets, and in essence, change the world. The way this works, for those of you who are not familiar with the asset class, is that we typically look at 1,000 companies a year, business plans, proposals for funding. Out of the 1,000 companies, we meet with 100. Out of the 100, we invest in 10. And a few years later, out of the 10, one becomes a very large company. That's what we call the unicorn or the home runs. You've probably read about them in the papers. Most of you read about that one company that everybody talks about. Most of you have no idea what the other 999 companies or entrepreneurs try to do. But I am very pleased tonight to say that one of our own is Karim Atiyeh, who managed to make it from the 1,000 companies.
I mean, yeah, you make, I mean, I feel like the journey ahead is even...
So, let me give a little more of an introduction and then it's all yours. I met Karim a few years ago, and he was like many of you in the room, had just come from Lebanon, Jamhour, had gone to this university, some of you heard about Harvard, came to New York, started on a very promising career at Oliver Wyman, amazing consulting firm, all set for life. And all of a sudden, I don't know what the hell happened to him or how his parents allowed him to do that, but he went rogue and decided to join the band of 1,000 companies, most of which you'll never hear about. So we'd love to hear why you did that and what happened since then.
I'll tell you about my experience because it was fun. Actually, Rami, who's in the room here, had interviewed me for Oliver Wyman and was a pretty big reason for why I wanted to join the firm. I was like, wow, like there's smart people at Oliver Wyman, and Rami's an honorary Lebanese by my standards. Like, I kind of want to work with Rami. And then after a couple of years there, Rami leaves. But I had a great time at Oliver Wyman. I think it was a great place to start my career. And you get put on these projects, and really smart, very ambitious people like end up being stuck in a room putting together lots of slides and presentations. And after 2 years of getting put on similar projects, like, well, there must be a better way. Like I was trained as a software engineer, and I just kept looking at the projects they were doing. It's like, why don't we like try to build some software to automate some of this so that we can work on more interesting projects? And I tried to do this within Oliver Wyman, but I think it was very hard. Like the firm was built very differently, and there was a time where I felt like, wow, I should probably like try to do this on my own. And it happened very quickly. At the time, I was on a visa, and I didn't understand the ramifications of leaving a job while you were on a visa. So I only had about 30 days to figure out a proper exit plan. And it took a lot of calling up friends and figuring out my options to eventually get an investor who essentially hired me to work at the firm, but really I was working on my company at the time.
That was Paribus.
That was Paribus. That was the first company, Paribus, which was a pretty odd company at the time. I mean, in some ways it may have been ahead of its time, because you would describe it today as an AI agent that saves you money on your online purchases. And that's what we did for a couple of years. So it was a piece of technology that you would, that was pretty invisible. You would hook it up to your mailbox. It would track all your transactions. And when there was an opportunity to get you a refund or save you money because you missed a sale or a coupon, we would automatically do it on your behalf. So the idea was you install the thing, and you don't do anything about it. You just get checks in the mail, basically, every couple of days. And that was a very fun ride. Within about a year, we had something like 1,000 users. And within about a year and a half, we were starting to get cease and desist letters from Amazon, Jet.com at the time, and all the retailers who were fighting us with all the lawyers that they had to try and get us out of there.
Did you have second thoughts?
Honestly,
Was that the moment to say, what the hell did I do?
I wanted to fight them, to be honest. I was like, this is great news. It's like, Amazon cares about us. Why don't we just like go to the press and like make it an even bigger deal? Because we didn't have that much to lose, really. Like our perspective was like, well, I don't know, we'll go find other jobs if it doesn't work out. So we kind of went into it, frankly, thinking that, and I think it's true, and that's advice that I give to a lot of young people today, which is graduating from college and you're getting this job. Like, they put a lot of work and effort to decide that they want you working at their company. So if you go do something for a year, and then in a year you come back and it's like, actually, I want to work here, they'll still hire you. So there's very little downside to actually trying something for a year and a half. And that was our philosophy. It was like, well, there's not that much to lose. And look, luckily, like, we were paid very well at Oliver Wyman, so I was able to put some money aside. And of course, lucky to have a lot of support from my parents, who were still very helpful at the time, that even though I think to this day they probably didn't exactly understood how Paribus worked and what I was doing, there was an element of like, well, give it a shot, you're there, you might as well try.
So before we talk about the segue from Paribus to Ramp, there was obviously a lot of risk involved with what you did. You came from Lebanon. What is it from your experience from Lebanon that got you to take that step?
Yeah, I mean, risk is part of everyday life in Lebanon. You don't get to decide whether you want to take risk. It's just imposed on you all the time. So you almost learn to live with the idea that like something really surprising that is usually pretty bad is going to happen. And yeah, you build a certain resilience and almost just this attitude of like, well, if it all goes away, I'll just rebuild it, and that's okay. So in a way, like, you kind of learn not to avoid risk. I think as opposed to a lot of, I mean, very developed countries where you grow up with a sense that things are good. Like, why would you take risk? There's no point. Like, things are working. Why would you take a risk in making it worse, essentially? But you don't have that choice in Lebanon.
So I didn't know your parents were going to be in the room tonight. So this is a question coming out of nowhere. But in our mentality, and you should be very proud of it, in our culture, failure is frowned upon. And every time I meet a young Lebanese entrepreneur looking to start a new company, I would say the number one thing you have to cross the chasm of telling your parents, I'm going to take that risk, because they don't want to look at their neighbors and say, my son or my daughter failed at their company. But the best entrepreneurs fail at their first venture and then really make it big on the second one. How did you get them comfortable with the risk you were taking?
Well, I mean, my mom still calls me and asks me why I don't work at Google, so.
Do you know now why?
But I don't know, there's a part of me that just like, I never thought that failure was an option, to be honest with you, which is, I know, a little bit crazy to think, but yeah, like it never crossed my mind.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So Paribus was a success.
Yeah.
Ramp is an outcome in a completely different universe. What did you learn from the first one? What applied to the second one?
I think the big one with I mean, we were so young when we started Paribus, where you still, like, you graduate from college and you're used to having like this track, right? Like, you get good grades, and then the next step is, I don't know, you take an exam and maybe you get into law or medicine, whatever you're trying to do, and like there's very much a track. And when you get into like venture at first, like we were hoping for that track. It's like, oh, you go talk to a seed investor and they'll guide you, and then a Series A investor will guide you even more. And we would talk to the people around us quite a bit, hoping for some guidance, and then like very quickly you realize that like, no, actually, like they don't know more than we do. So I think with Paribus we were like almost very reliant on outside feedback signals and advice. And with Ramp, we just from the start, like frankly, when we started the company, like part of the goal at first was like, we don't want to raise any capital. We ended up raising a lot of capital, but the framework kind of shifted from, we're not just raising capital, we're actually getting more partners that, the same way that like people join the company and they trade their time for equity in the company, investors trade capital, their own or their LPs, for a stake in the company, and they have a vested interest in the company succeeding, and we treat them like we do our employees. So with Ramp, I think one of the things we did incredibly well is basically assuming that a lot of our investors were an extension of our team, and worked with them very closely on bringing portfolio companies on board, helping us recruit. And from the very start, we put like an incredible emphasis on the talent bar and just hiring. I would say, like in retrospect, there's always luck involved, and I think one of the things that we got lucky with, well, there's probably two things. One is, I don't know if you all remember I mean, I'm going to make maybe some people unhappy, but like the DEI wave and how crazy it was in venture and kind of everywhere. And there was an element of me, it was like, well, it's hard enough to hire really good people, then the last thing that I want is like even more stupid restrictions. And part of it is like even the quota system that you get in Lebanon, which I always thought was kind of crazy, where like you get a role or a job based on your religion, and it's like, it makes no sense. It's like, shouldn't you want the most qualified person for the job? So there's an element where like we ignored that whole wave and just did recruiting the way we wanted to, and I think that helped us greatly. And during the early COVID days, I think you'd have to be like kind of crazy to decide that in the early days of COVID you wanted to leave a high-paying job for a risky startup. So I think we got our fair share of crazy ambitious people that just wanted to work harder at a time where like the world was essentially imploding.
Amazing. So Karim, one last question. I met a number of people tonight, some I knew, some I didn't know before, who are actually working at Ramp.
Yeah.
And so you've created a magnet, I guess, for the young Lebanese who are not necessarily going down the banking and the consulting route.
Which I think is a good thing.
Why are you here tonight?
I mean, ideally to inspire as many people as possible to just take a shot and build something. And it's nice because, I mean, I met a lot of people earlier this evening that were either starting company or had joined early stage startups. And I think that's a change from I guess my perception of what life used to be when I was in New York 10 years ago, where I just felt primarily focused on finance. So it's nice to see like this expansion into entrepreneurship and technology, because frankly, I think everything's technology now, including finance.
Well, congratulations. We're out of time.
Thank you.
I've talked to you for hours.